Hi, Owning This Life family. It's me, MJ, again with another episode of Owning This Life. Thank you so much for tuning in with us today. You know that we interview amazing people, and today we're interviewing someone who actually inspired the show. You would have seen him on TV. He was on ETV and on SABC, also as a presenter, but he also does amazing things and now runs his own channel. Please welcome Samm Marshall. How are you, Sam?
I'm very good, eh? I think everybody is trying to deal with the COVID stuff. That's as you're talking, I'm reflecting on that intro, and I'm thinking, oh, SABC, ETV, that makes me pretty old, doesn't it? Because I feel old. Today I feel specifically old, because my kids are very young and they take so much energy, so I feel very old today.
Yeah, but I think with lockdown, with us not being able to move around as much as we used to, all of us are feeling old. I'm seeing the grays pop out all over the place now.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that lockdown is so interesting, so as you know, I work with a lot of clients, and we had to kind of put together some stats around kind of the effect of lockdown.
Yeah.
So, as you know, the divorce rate in Saudi Arabia is sitting at 30%. And the overwhelming reason is that a lot of people have found out that their husbands are actually married to other people.
Wow.
Think about it, prior to lockdown, your husband is just leaving for work, but he's actually leaving for another family.
Wow.
So a lot of people have gotten divorced during this period because you actually find out that you don't like the person you're married to. I'm fortunate, as of yesterday, I celebrated my 10th year anniversary with my wife.
Wow, congratulations.
I love you. Just so that she knows, I'm going to score points. As husbands, we have to try and score points.
So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how you got into the industry in the first place. I read an article that you used to practice presenting as a child. I want to know, how true is that, and how sure were you that you wanted to be in this industry when you were growing up?
So, you know, I knew that I was going to be a journalist when I was already 7 or 8. I lied my entire teens in terms of what I was doing for a living. I lied all the way into my 20s until I actually became a journalist. So I kind of manifested this idea of what I was going to do for a living when I was a child already. And so I did have the tape recorder. I did listen to some of the greats, the Clarence Fords back in the day, Dimitri Jagels that used to be on Grub FM.
Yeah.
And I actually got to work with Dimitri at some point. So I always knew what I was going to do. I also grew up incredibly poor, so I kind of had to I had to zig and zag before I got to where I needed to be, but I always knew what I was going to do for a living.
What do you think inspired you essentially to become presenting? Because I know you're saying you grew up incredibly poor, so the only kind of view of a presenter you would have had would have been on the TV, and like no other contact for someone who does stuff like that.
You know, that's such an interesting question because, you know, I grew up in Mannenburg on the Cape Flats, and I remember we had this old Blaupunkt TV. I don't know if they're still around. I think they might be. And our TV got to a point where the only way it would work is if you stack those big encyclopedias on top of it to keep the pressure of the screen. That's how it would work. Right? So it's an interesting question because I don't necessarily think I grew up with real time in my immediate space examples, but my brother, kind of in my teens, also he's in this kind of line of work. His name is Bobby Brown. A lot of people know him. He's very well respected. He's the breakfast DJ on Smile FM. He's an MTN award winner. He's worked for 702. So kind of growing up with that example of my older brother in the media space, my mom has always been a singer, whether she was singing from a professional amateur level. So there was always kind of people doing stuff that was outside of the normal.
What was expected.
Yeah, and so I kind of grew up with all of that. But what was the deciding factor on why journalism was an important thing for me? It's just kind of, I think, maybe storytelling. And I was really impressed with the voices back then. Because DJs used to have a very particular sound. And, yeah, so I was kind of impressed with that stuff. Yeah.
No, so we speak a lot about, we do media training together, and we've traveled quite a bit together. But I like the fact that you're saying you like the storytelling part, because you're really a good storyteller. And I don't think a lot of people know that. sometimes a person can just sit and listen to the things that you say. I mean, that's how the show came about, right? In the first place, because of a conversation we had about it. What kind of stories have you covered over the years that have really spoken to you personally?
You know, that's a good and a strange question, because the stories that have actually spoken to me are stories that I've never done. I've never kind of looked at it in that way. I'm driven by the stories that are emotive. So at the moment, GBV, gender-based violence,
Yeah.
the kind of stories and how these incidents come about is the stuff that really strikes me. Like, for example, this horrible story of this young woman who was pregnant and then hung from a tree. It's so horrific that it's almost not real.
Yeah.
Being a journalist and having covered, for example, the repatriation of Moses Kukane,
Yeah.
that for me was something that struck with me. I've interviewed a ton of celebrities and their struggles and how they've moved through their difficulties. Reporting live from Vuyombuli's funeral, somebody
Yeah.
who was a stalwart in the industry. Being at the Rock at the local elections, covering elections, being there when Madiba died, and being outside his house and reporting. It's stuff like that. So I've been part of it. I've as not only as somebody who works in the space, but also as somebody who is just a viewer, a voyeur.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of the impact that storytelling has for me, and I think it has fantastic value. And by the way, everybody has a story.
Yeah, that's true. And the more I'm speaking to people, the more I'm finding out how hidden their stories are. What do you think the struggles are that's been in the industry, in journalism in particular with you, and then coming around and doing social TV, that you've had to like overcome or just look past? Because a lot of people say that in the beginning you have really big struggles that you overcome, but then they're not struggles anymore. They're just side paths that teach you a new lesson. Is that how you see it, and how do you deal with, for instance, big roadblocks that have tried to derail you off of the path?
So, you know, I have always had the uncanny ability to jump ship just before it hits an iceberg. It's a weird way of describing it, but I've always had the ability to kind of shift at the right time and not overstay my welcome.
Yeah.
And to also, while I'm walking the journey, to look out for the next opportunity. So, I mean, my very first job was something that my brother did for me, in actual fact. At the time, my brother, I had this agreement with him, and I asked him, listen, do you mind if I come in 2 or 3 hours before I have to bounce to work, just to come and learn the ropes? And he said, cool, no problem. And then what happened was I kept on staying later and later. And then eventually one of the editors recognized, kind of saw me running in and out, and called me one day and said, hey, who are you and what are you doing here? And I kind of explained my story. And I then got a 1.5-year contract off that.
Wow.
But I had to work for free for a very long time. I didn't get paid at all. And I then was able to then leverage the fact that I was working at 567, and kind of was able to then jump my way into other positions, because the radio platform was a very powerful platform. And so I've always been somebody that can see the opportunities, and kind of use one thing to kind of move to the next.
Yeah.
Because every position, every opportunity carries weight.
Yeah.
And if you're sitting in there neck deep in those opportunities and not looking past the horizon, you're going to find yourself those opportunities, in some instances, dry up. Not for everybody. In my instances, they kind of dried up, and I always had to kind of move forward. Other people find themselves in those positions for years, and then all of a sudden they're unemployable, because you've been doing the same job for 20-odd years.
And they don't have like job satisfaction from moving, you know, and growing. I find that a lot of people believe that being in this industry is easy. And getting into it is easy. Everyone wants to be a celebrity these days. Everybody wants to be on TV, because just being one time on TV kind of apparently sets you up. But I want to know from someone who's in this industry what the truth is like.
I mean, right now, creating content is easy. Right now, telling your story is easy. Getting into a form or a version of this industry is easy. Majority of us want the same outcomes. We want numbers, eyeballs, we want traction onto our platforms, we want engagement. That's the difficult part. Because there's just so many content producers. And it's very difficult to to definitively define why somebody has such a huge following. Because it could be that they were the host of Top Billing, and Top Billing itself has an audience.
Yes, yes.
And that some of that audience migrated with that person onto their platform. But whether the person's actually an interesting person and can deliver content is a completely different conversation. So the industry for me is easier. Telling the story is easier. I mean, I can imagine a 18-year-old boy taking a entry-level camera and going and tell stories in his community that a year from now will be picked up by a local community radio station. And then these stories break and eventually they become part of a provincial radio station. It's a lot of people don't want to walk that road because it's such a long and laborious process. It doesn't happen overnight for everybody. Some people are lucky. It happens instantly. They're likable. Somebody else has to maybe do it for a year longer or 2 years longer. And if you're not seeing immediate return, it can maybe be a little, it can create a negative experience.
And be discouraging.
And discouraging,
So you have social TV. I want to know how that came about, because I know you from media training and from TV, and then you told me about social TV. So I was like, okay, that's really cool. You've got the radio and everything. How did that come about, and your relationship with the people that you are airing your stuff on now?
I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I am constantly looking, whether it's right or wrong, at opportunities. So social TV, I saw a gap that a lot of the good news, social impact, corporate social responsibility and investments, when they were not being covered by traditional media. And reason being, a lot of the editors felt, well, if this brand is putting out 1 million bottles of water in this community, surely this brand should pay, because that's kind of feel-good advertising. But for me, 1 million bottles of water speaks to a constituency, a community, and that's the kind of audience that I cover. So when I started with this idea of putting together a social impact news platform, we didn't get a single press release. Nobody was interested. Corporate social responsibility. I mean, year on year it's grown. Last year it was like 10 point something billion rand. That's up from the 9 billion the year before. But when we started, nobody was interested. And yet again, it's a perseverance, getting people to understand. But then there's the other thing also. A CSR, social impact news platform, means nothing if it can't develop partners. So we got partners. So if you travel throughout this country, at every airport, you'll see our news. We've partnered with Proudly South African. We have relationships with Mail and Guardian. We've got relationships with other news agencies that take our content. And so immediately it was, how do we add credibility? And the only way to add credibility is to go and find the partners that are already credible, to kind of, by default, de facto, it becomes your credibility.
So do you think that your history in journalism and everything that you've done kind of has driven this project to where it is right now? Because I've been watching it and it seems like it's growing and growing, and the show's going to be on it soon. So do you think that it's that experience that kind of drove you to go in this direction? Because you are right in the sense that there are no social any networks covering CSI at all. And you don't see it, we don't talk about it unless you're working in a corporate environment, you know what's happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, no, look, there are news platforms, but traditionally what they do is they cover like the big 5 or the big 10. So if it's Nelson Mandela doing something, of course, if it's Red Cross, of course, but there are so many organizations and companies in South Africa that can't get any of that traction onto traditional media platforms. And by also having journalists that work in our team writing the stories, it also takes away the fluffiness of doing good.
Oh, okay.
And so from the beginning, we strategically identified that let's not write fluffy stories. Let's apply journalism principles to writing corporate social investment stories.
Okay.
So if you go on our and then we also shifted. So instead of writing long, laborious text content, long form content, we said, okay, let's do video, let's do audio, let's use pictures. You can send us your own audio file via WhatsApp. So we've incorporated all these little kind of things. We've created a TikTok channel. We've done all of these little things, Instagram, so that the platform is relatable, but at the same time it has to be serious because we're dealing with corporates, organizations, individuals. And so we don't do the guy who cleans the street or the penguin who walked from Cape Town to Johannesburg. There's a place for that.
Yeah.
But we kind of wanted to really position CSI, corporate social investment, as a news source, the same way you have crime, sport, entertainment.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of where my head has been at, and kind of why I've been driving my team so hard to make sure that we kind of position it, and we are growing. We do have international partnerships. We do have offices in Zimbabwe and in Botswana, so we are growing.
What is your plan going forward with the channel?
My plan is that at some point we will have a 24-hour news channel that broadcasts global CSI, that you'll have your headline news. And the thing is also, part of the reason is because I think CSI, corporate social investment, corporate social responsibility, integrated thinking, whatever you want to call it, there's a space for it because people are slowly, not off bad news and the terrible news, but we need an alternative.
Yes, definitely.
And you need to be able to switch on your tally and see, oh, there's an opportunity. And that's why I started a platform called Baysoro, which runs parallel to social TV. So social TV covers corporate social investment news, but Hey Cyril, if you log onto our platform, you'll see opportunities. So it's all about reigniting, rebooting, and reimagining the country. So if you go there and you're looking for bursaries, you'll find there's bursaries. If you're looking for competitions, how to end, so for example, at the moment, there's a massive competition that Liberty and Lion and Volkswagen is running.
Yeah.
Obviously, separate competitions, but it's opportunities around women empowerment. If you are a company who's looking for your logos to be designed for free, you can enter this competition. And I think people need a place to go where they can find opportunities. And so that's kind of where I see myself. I always tell my journalists that it's quite amazing to wake up every morning and deal with good news.
Yes.
So I'm still plugged into all the terrible stuff, but I love the fact that I can offset. I spend my entire day going through emails and looking at content where people are saying, we're doing this. Like, for example, on Saturday, they're cooking, was it 60? They're cooking soup and they're going to feed 284,000 people.
Wow.
And it's chefs all around the country that are virtually cooking together, and they will be distributing. I mean, that's a great feeling.
And we don't ever hear this stuff on the news, especially now with COVID. I think it's just getting progressively worse. I mean, to the point where most people are plugging out of the news now because it's increasing depression. It's increasing anxiety amongst people. I mean, someone even said to me this morning, they don't think they can interview with me because they're so afraid of COVID.
Yeah.
Based on the fact that the news is just doom and gloom.
No, seriously, and I felt the same way driving here. I mean, I told you about my reaction in Pick n Pay when somebody coughs. It's like this person is physically turned into a zombie right in front of you, and everybody wants to jump 2 meters to the right or to the left. So yeah, we are overloaded at the moment, and it's playing into our paranoia and anxiety.
What I like about the site is the fact that everything is in the same place. Because for most of us who are entrepreneurs who are looking for opportunities to tap into, it's very difficult to find them. And getting these, what do they call them? The emails that they send and they want you to take part in the thing, whatever. Yeah. I'll find the name. So anyway, those things, we don't have opportunities to do stuff like that because no matter how you get your documentation and everything together, you are already not top of line for those kind of jobs. Man. Someone's already in waiting that they just need to do the protocols.
When I get a tender, it feels like my dreads are going back into my head. When I look at a tender, the tender process is so cumbersome in this country. I mean, I got a request to fill out some RFP thing for ad hoc editing work for one of our guys, and they wanted more than 18, 19, 20 documents for something that we don't even know when it's going to happen. That's just ridiculous.
And every time they send out a new tender, there's new documents that need to be added. So we're never 100% prepared. So I think that having that place on the site where there's everything you can go and look at, especially the social development sort of stuff, because small businesses don't understand how much it actually helps their business by getting involved in social projects.
Yeah.
So, okay, covering all of that, what we usually do at the end of the show is, specifically because I wanted to get to know you better, and you really cover most of what you do. Who you are is what you do. And I feel like you're so tapped into everything that's happening around you all of the time. And you spoke earlier about how you seeing how fathers have changed. We've had a conversation,
Yeah.
and I've heard how you parents as well. I feel like every part of who you are, you make sure that you touch on it in some part of your life and in your business.
But I think God gave me the kind of children that wouldn't let me get out of being a father. I know everybody thinks that, but my kids are like my 2-year-old. Like last night, my 2-year-old walked up to me and said, "When are we eating?" And my wife and I have a deal. When we got involved 10 years ago, she doesn't cook, so I do all the cooking every night. So my child just walked up to me and said, like, "It's late now. I want to eat." And I go, "Okay, boss." And then I have to prepare a meal. So yeah. So.
You know, every woman watching this right now is giving their husband like the side eye.
Well, it was like, look, it's something that she declared on our first date. I don't cook, and it's something I've never asked her to do. So I cook. I prepare the meals. Even if I had a hard day at the office, even in between meetings, I'll prepare their breakfast, their lunch, and their supper.
Wow, you really do it all.
No, I don't. I mean, I don't clean. That's the other thing. My wife is slightly OCD, so
she makes sure that's handled.
Yeah, but I mean, from a cooking perspective and stuff like that, and kind of being involved with their upbringing and stuff. That's the stuff that I do. But yeah, cooking is my thing. It's every pot and pan in my kitchen belongs to me. It doesn't belong to my wife.
Wow.
Every knife too as well.
Yeah. So the question that I wanted to get to was, I want to know from you personally, if you look at your whole life's work and everything that you do now, what does owning your life mean to you?
It's so funny. I actually thought about that on my way here because it can turn into a cliche almost to say that, okay, owning my life means this. But I do believe, and I had such a passionate conversation with my mom about kind of where we find ourselves and why we find ourselves in these spaces. I think owning your life is kind of dealing with your reality. There's no reason why somebody can't be the next Oprah. It's how hard are you willing to work?
Yes.
How hard are you willing to promote that content? And I think a lot of us, I can only speak for myself, but a lot of us grow up with what is that person going to think? Even though that person doesn't contribute a single cent or iota to your life on any level. And yet you're preoccupied with what people are going to think. And the reality is, this is actually where it starts. This is how people develop their content, how they become who they are. I mean, Ricky Gervais is a perfect example of somebody who didn't know that he was going to be a comedian. And it's only later in his life that he is this wonderful comedian, but also he's at a point where he doesn't care what people think. And if you watch his videos, he insults everybody.
Yeah.
I just think owning your life means that you make peace with people are going to think about you, what they want.
Yes.
Do what you need to do. If sitting with your cell phone and recording yourself talking on the phone and uploading that, if that's what makes you happy, do it. Just have a purpose.
Yes.
I've always told my kids that it doesn't matter what you do. I don't care if you end up being a dancer, a singer. I don't care what you do. Just go and get the formal qualification and understanding of what the purpose is. Because I think I don't have to see my child as a doctor or my daughter as whatever she wants to be. Do it. Just know I'm here to support you. Stop thinking about what the neighbor thinks.
Yeah.
If you want to dance in the street and you need to dance every day for 4 hours a day so you become the best dancer, dance 4 hours a day so you can become the best dancer. I think that's what owning your life is. It's that let's get rid of excuses. Let's get rid of what people think. We don't owe them anything. They don't pay anything towards our bills. They're not raising our kids. Just do what you need to do and get on with you doing what you need to do.
And I think you demonstrate that quite well in your life.
No, I'm also sometimes, at some point, I'm worried about what people think. And I mean, now that I'm in my 40s, I know I'm slowly moving away from what people think. But it consumed my entire life.
Really?
I could have done so much more, but I was so worried about what this person thinks and how this person will react and do I look silly. And the reality is, I think that's really the difference between being super successful and being mediocre.
But I'm finding that with a lot of presenters, if I speak to them, that's exactly what they say though. That for the first part of their life, they were pretty preoccupied with what was going on around them as opposed to where they needed to go. But they say when you hit 50, you hit the age where you simply just don't even care anymore. Like it is what it is and what you need to do, you're going to do.
I mean, obviously you're far away from 50, so that's why you're saying stuff like that. I can see 50. 50 is actually my neighbor. And I don't mean the rapper. 50 is my neighbor. I'm in the same space. I'll hit 50 pretty soon. So yeah, I think we do with age care less, but I do think if we raise our kids right, they can get where we are, where I am. If I raise my 2-year-old, my 4-year-old, my 6-year-old, and my 11-year-old right, they should get there by 18 and not 45.
Yeah.
And I think that's wasted time.
It is.
So I'd rather wake up every morning and tell my son, you're the prettiest boy on the planet, you're the handsomest. I want him to get over all of the nonsense that has taken me 25, 30 years to get over, because it will hold him back. And I think our role as parents is to really put out young people that are so confident that they don't need, we're always going to need people, but you don't need people's approval.
And validation.
Because if you know what they say, if you keep on looking, you'll find it.
And usually all the wrong things.
In all the wrong places.
Thank you so much, Sam. I'm so glad we were able to do this, because when we spoke about, I remember it was 1.5 years ago, and you said to me, if you have the stuff, just do it.
Just do it.
And I kind of had to swallow my pride and be like, okay, I'm going to do this thing. And I was actually surprised how much it's actually been a part of my own purpose.
Yeah, and how many episodes do you have now?
We are going on 20-something already. But you really inspired the show, honestly. And it's amazing to see where you're going with social TV and everything that you're doing. I think you speak a lot to those of us who had those concerns about the people around us and what are they going to say. So
if they're not paying your bills,
yeah, no,
cares.
they don't feed you.
Nobody cares. Because, opinion doesn't feed you.
Exactly.
It holds you back.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Sam, for coming all this way and joining me. I really enjoy talking to you all of the time. And thank you, Owning This Life family, for tuning in today. As you can see, my conversations with Sam can go on forever, but I really hope that you got value out of this episode. If there is any information that you need on the show, you can go to www.owningthislife.co.za, and if you have any suggestions, email us on info@owningthislife.co.za. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram and on Facebook for updates on the show. But I hope that this show created value for you, and I can't wait to see you next time.